Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Save Slot 1. Oh, dang it, sorry, this save slot's already full. Save Slot 2, a new show here on Chumbag TV with myself, Nick Sivak, and Kandula, and others potentially in the future, where we ask ourselves a very important question, and that is what games we've been playing. It's a show about game reviews, impressions, all that sort of jazz. You may remember that we used to do this on the Respawn Station podcast, but check out Save Slot 1 if you want to figure out why we decided to kind of spin this off into its own sort of discussion. So without further ado, Sri, now for the third time, how are you feeling? Is there anything that you want to get off your chest before we get into the discussion, before more tech issues happen?
Nick, I just want to say I'm proud of you, man. I know how hard these intros are for you to do, and I think you nailed it. The third time's the charm is what it is. But no, I'm excited. You know, we've been a little overzealous in how we approached the start of the new Respawn Station podcast and also this show. So I think from now on, it's best if we just assume an alternating release cadence. So 1 week Respawn Station podcast, another week Save Slot, just to not, overload the system. But that being said, this show, as every episode before and after, is brought to you by RespawnStation.com. It's what butters the wheels. And Nick, would you believe that even though Google is trying to shut us down, that we have not decreased in viewership? Yes. Act shocked, Nick. Make an O face. Give me a thumbnail. Yeah, there you go. So, thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone who's been reading our articles over on RespawnStation.com. We really appreciate it, and it makes it worth putting all the effort into writing a review, because it's certainly not just like a fun task, But that being said, it is a little bit cathartic sometimes when you're go through an experience. It's almost like, for me at least, Nick, I feel like reviews are almost like diary entries where I'm just like, dear diary, my legs are, I write all my reviews with my legs kicking behind me while I'm laying on my bed. But, and so now you can picture that whenever I do it. But that being said, let me first plug a few reviews that you can go check out right now and read on the website. We have one, a Warhammer 40k Mechanicus 2 review. It's formatted a little bit new and different from what we typically do, but Graham did an awesome job, so go show him some love. Go read that article. And also, I gotta say, I gotta obviously pat my own back. I can't just keep patting everyone else's back. I came up with the subtitle for the review, and I thought it was pretty good. It's called Perfectly Adeptus. So, and it's, a decent game from what I hear, but again, check out the review for more. We can also, while you're there, you can check out my review for Directive 8020, a game that we'll briefly be talking about later on in the show, as well as my first impressions for Gothic 1 Remake. There is both a video review and a written review for my thoughts on Gothic. And again, we'll touch on it briefly here, but let me just say that even if you watch the video, check out the article, because I made them at the same time. And that meant that while I was editing the video review, I had thoughts that I wanted to include in my written review. And so, it's just the written review is the best final version of my thoughts on this game. But that being said, we'll actually start talking about Gothic first, just because Nick and I seem to have 3 games each to talk about. This is sort of my fourth bastard child, because, again, it is just first impressions, not more kind of a deeper thoughts or review. Mm-hmm. Gothic, Nick, are you familiar with this world of Gothic? I know I've talked enough about Eurojank for you to be assimilated into the culture, but
yeah. I'm aware of it in name alone, really. Like, I know bits and pieces from watching, trailers and deep dives of the remake here. Like, I know it's like this weird, like, kind of prisoner kind of thing, and like the area is entrapped in this, magic bubble, whatnot. So, like, I have bits and pieces, but really it's a series that I'm not super, super familiar with.
I think that it's... I would think that you, knowing your kind of gaming interests, would find some intrigue in just playing through a Piranha Bytes game. I know that you're more of a sci-fi guy, so maybe Elix 1 or 2 would be more, apt for you. But that being said, I think Gothic Remake is the perfect kind of Piranha Bytes game to play, even though it's not a Piranha Bytes game. It's uh, long story short, Piranha Bytes owned the Gothic name initially when they were publishing the game or when they were developing the games. They had a fallout with a publisher where like the name was switched over, and then eventually I think they had the rights to it, but THQ now holds kind of a lot of that Gothic original stuff. And specifically like Piranha Bytes ended up making Risen as a response to not having the IP for Gothic, and so there's this big fan theory that Risen builds off of one of the possible endings for Risen or Gothic 3. So it's sort of this weird universe that they have. But Gothic Remake looks awesome. It plays pretty smoothly. It's this term that I keep going back to. I mentioned it in my Greedfall 2 review, which was friction. How much friction a game provides and what you're willing to do with. In the case of a Gothic, I do think that is inherently built into the game. Like it's a core mechanic at the heart of the gameplay experience of Gothic is for the game to not hold your hand and for it to push you around a little bit and bully you. And it just, I find that on top of those things are nice to deal with. The first time I'm going up against an animal, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not at all prepared to handle this small creature. It sets up this challenge, and then it took me hours to just get to a point where I'm like, okay, I think I can explore a little bit confidently now. So that is all fine, and that challenge actually excites me, especially because I can tweak the difficulty settings to kind of be a little bit easier than what it probably was back in the day. However, the game has a little bit too many technical difficulties at this current time, like a week and a half after the game has come out. There has been regular updates, but it's so weird. Like for example, there's one thing I mentioned in my video review during like a little problem sequence that I had that I didn't get to put in the video because it happened after I recorded that audio voiceover. But there was an update for the game. I launched it, and it was a black screen. Like it would play the app opening animation where like Alchemia Entertainment, THQ Nordic, and then no menu screen. I could hear the music, but the menu itself would not launch, and I could not look at the game to start it. Weird. I had to sit there. I had restarted a few times. It didn't work. I just sat there, and eventually, like 3 or 4 minutes later, it just popped up, and I could jump into my save. So it's just weird stuff like that make it a harder experience than it needs to be. But once it's gotten a few patches in, this is definitely a game I want to revisit, even if it's only for me to brag about the fact that I've beaten Gothic, because it's just one of those games that it's just been on my backlog, and I'm curious to actually get the full experience.
Now, the sort of impression that I get from Gothic is that it's a bit more hardcore leaning. Does that make sense to you? Like, what about it, if that is true, makes it a bit more of like a hardcore RPG?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hardcore, but I think part of it is, and the reason why I think like you would probably be fine with it is because you've played those original Fallout games and stuff, and it's not the same gameplay style, but it is a little bit of the brutality of what you're going through. And some of the stuff that I personally feel that work well for me is that you don't always feel like you're the hero or the chosen one. There's there's this thing that happens in the game where there's 3 camps in the setting that you go to, and one of them, when you go to the old camp, they're like, hey man, this place is tough. You want to give me some money so I can like watch your back? And if you say no to him, there will be multiple people throughout the camp that if they see you, they'll just be like, hey man, I heard you forgot to pay your shit, and then just fucking fuck you up. And then and I'll spoil this little surprise. I mentioned it in my review or my video review. But essentially, there was one guy where I was waiting for like a certain task, and I saw this guy. I was just like, "Hey, what's up?" And he's like, "Hey, uh, I know this guy who has this valuable thing. If you and I can't take it alone, but if you and I go, we can jump the guy. We'll steal his shit. I'll sell it, and then I get like I keep the money, but you can get like the good word that you helped me out." And then like I was like, no, I want to split. What the fuck are you talking? And he's like, all right, fine, whatever, 50-50. And so my dumb ass was like, yeah, I pulled one over on this guy. So I'm following him to the fucking treasure, and we get to the spot, and he's like, this is for fucking Bloodwind or whatever. And he starts fucking attacking me. And so it really caught me off guard. Yeah, it was.
He was gonna pay you in
something
clout.
like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exposure. But yeah, it just wasn't. It doesn't hold your hand in that way, and it's not afraid to beat the shit out of you. One thing I will say that is like a really kind of a clutch feature in an open world RPG, and I hope more have it, which is when you're loading back into the game for the first time, there's like a little on the loading screen, there's a voiceover that explains the like where you are in the story at the moment. You know, it's like he was just it's like a woman, I think, but I could be wrong. But it's like this character just going, he was just entered the colony and he's already gotten a task. How will he achieve it? You know, like it's something like that to just be like, oh, that's a good way to like remind yourself where you are in the story. But anyway, that's enough about Gothic. Unless you have anything else to say about Gothic.
No, I watched the video review. I think it looks interesting, but yeah, some of those tech issues seem a bit glaring. So maybe hold off for a patch or two.
That's exactly where I'm at. Hopefully, one day we'll have a save slot where I'll actually talk about my full thoughts on Gothic.
A completed save file.
Nick, where do you want to go? I know you also have kind of sort of first impressions early access. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, let's start with that, just because the other stuff I'm playing isn't exactly, codes we got for Respawn Station or anything like that. But this is a game that I was actively looking forward to. And you actually messaged me one day and you were like, hey, like, are you keeping an eye on this Dead as Disco game? And I was like, funny you should ask. Yes, I am. I played a demo that they had for like Steam Next Fest or whatever. And I was like, this game looks really, really cool. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on it. Lo and behold, we got early access to this game. So thank you to the developers and publisher for sending over the code. And yeah, I will also have a video version of my impressions. You said the written one is already up, right? Or is okay, so yeah, you can go read that there if you would prefer, or we'll touch on some stuff here, I'm sure, that will be in the inevitable video. But yeah, Dead as Disco. I don't know where to tackle this conversation from, so I'll just start at the top, which is this game is like Batman Arkham Combat. So think your punches, your kicks, your counters, and dodges. But everything is synced to the music, a la Baby Driver, Hi-Fi Rush, that sort of thing. This game is so much fun, even in this early version. It's a concept that seems simple on paper, but execution is everything with these things. That's why I loved Hi-Fi Rush so much, was that there's some cracks here and there, but by and large, the game really sticks to that everything works to the beat, and when you get that just right, it can lead to some really electric moments in the gameplay. Dead as Disco here feels like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like Hi-Fi Rush, but like cranked up with energy drinks or something. Like it's very much a style game, like style heavy, style forward game.
Yeah, it's much more visually stimulating than Hi-Fi Rush, which is saying something, because Hi-Fi Rush is within the world, so you're kind of exploring it, but like it's just a lot more in your face.
Yeah, and it's bright colors, very vibrant, stark lines. It's more 3D than like a Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush is also 3D, but it's like Saturday morning cartoon kind of 3D, whereas this is like 3D characters and
I think also the color palette, goes into that as well, right? Because as you're saying, like that Saturday morning cartoon color palette of Hi-Fi Rush differs from the fucking neon yellows and pinks of Dead as Disco.
Yeah, Dead as Disco is like saturation to like 250% is what, think of that going for the colors here. But the syncing to the music, that marriage of gameplay and music, I think is extremely potent with this game. The punching sound effects, we did a episode of Retrograde, which shout out to our other podcast show, where we talked about Batman Arkham Origins recently, and we all talked about, the sound effects of Batman just clobbering thugs. This game feels like even more cranked in those sound effects. Like, it is full on, like, smacking a giant gelatin, like, mass, I'll just say, whenever you hit people. Sure. And when it's synced to the music, so the music is multi-genre, we'll say. It is like, there's elements of disco, but there's also like heavy metal, dance electronic. There's like a lot of different types of music that you are able to play here. And it's incorporated in a really interesting way. So like Hi-Fi Rush, I'm going to compare the two here, and kind of spoiler alert, Hi-Fi Rush is the other game that I've been playing. So we'll get into that as well. But with Hi-Fi Rush, as you kind of described earlier, you're exploring through like the world and the levels, and everything is set to the beat. And it's usually a song that has a specific, BPM that everything is set to. And you'll get like some subtle variations in that, but you really don't feel it unless you're playing the bonus modes where they really like crank the speed up to like double speed in Hi-Fi Rush. Dead as Disco is very dynamic, and to the point that you'll have like slow songs, you'll have fast songs, but the animations will change to match the speed of the song that you're playing. So no matter what type of song you're playing, it still feels just as satisfying. Like, your brain just kind of, at least for me, it automatically clicks. Like, if I'm in a fast moving song and I hear like do do ba do do ba, or if I'm in a slower moving song, it's like do do ah. Like, it just kind of like your brain kind of adapts to it, and it still just feels like it just always works, which is great. At least for the songs in game. The reason I mention that is that the other cool thing about Dead as Disco is that you can import your own songs into the game, and this is an area that definitely can be improved on like the user end, because like you do have to go in with the songs, and you need to know the BPM for the song that you're importing, roughly at least. You can go in and fine tune like hit delays and things like that, and it's less, import and hit play. And I think the closer that they can get to just like hitting import and hit play and it just working, the better. But what I was trying to say with all of that is when it works, it works. And honestly, I had more fun playing Dead as Disco and its combat system than I did Batman Arkham. It's just like something about like that music syncing. It just does something in my brain chemistry where it's just like, this feels amazing when you just perfectly time a dodge. You go and counter. You play as, I'm jumping around a lot, so I apologize, but you play as this character named Charlie Disco, which I love that name. And basically the moves, they are fighting moves, but they animate more like dance moves, which is great. Like, there's this hilarious one. I don't know if I'll be able to show you or not.
Hell yeah. Physical demonstration.
So there's a part where, like, you would do like a bunch of fast punches, and like Charlie just like kind of leans back into it and then just goes like that as he's punching, and like his shoulders are rocking like on each hit and stuff. His dodges will be like twirling dances and stuff like that. So, you get like an enemy coming at you about to hit you with a bat, and he just like jukes and jives out of the way. So it's a really fun kind of presentation while also feeling really impactful, really crazy. Like, you can do these like combo enders, I guess you'll say, where like he like jumps up onto enemies and then just like slams them down on the beat. And if you time that right in your song, it's so much fun. I don't want to hog up all the airwaves. There is some more stuff I can talk about, but do you have any like questions or anything about it while I'm
well,
gushing?
that's the thing, right? Like, how far do you think it is from feeling fit? Because it seems like the core mechanics are there, like for the actual full game, but it is still in early access. Do you think
Yes.
there's like an idea of when this will be ready?
I don't think that there's a specific time yet. They are definitely listening to a lot of player feedback. And the thing that I would say the game is weakest on right now is just overall content, right? Like they have a really strong base with the gameplay, with the systems, the animation and the art style is like really solid. Really like that. But they have this sort of in the early access version, it's sort of structured almost like a Mega Man game. So like you know how like in an old Mega Man game, you have like kind of a grid of bosses and you can kind of choose whichever one you want to go to fight first.
Sure.
They sort of have a similar thing here where there's going to be like a number of bosses that you select from. And in this version, they have 3 that are available. And even between the 3, it's like some definitely feel more finished than others. There's this one against a music producer named Prophet. And in this fight, there's like a whole intro cutscene with like, dialogue back and forth. You go through, start beating up enemies. There's multi-phases. So the boss fights, or how the levels work, I guess is how I'll describe this. You do a couple rounds of fights. The arenas will change and, move around and stuff. And then you get into the boss fight proper. And the boss fights are usually like multi-phase sort of affairs. And going into the boss fight, there's like this whole animated cutscene, title card, like everything for Prophet. And that one just feels more like the vertical slice, we'll say, of what all of them are going to be like. Then you get into some of the other ones, and it's like they have like an animated cutscene, but there's no audio. There's no transition cutscene or phase transitions at all. So there's definitely a lot of polish that still needs to be added, in addition to just kind of making sure that these levels and fights have the most amount of impact possible, I guess. It needs a lot more fleshing out and polish, but also the combat, while it's really fun and it's just kind of like fighting, groups of enemies and stuff, they have a little bit of variety here and there with that. The bosses feel a little bit spongy. Like the fights take a good amount of time and they're a little bit challenging, which I wasn't really expecting. And while you're going through the fight, like, there's maybe a couple phases that you'll get taken out on, but you usually have to restart the fight from the beginning each time. And so that was kind of like, there's a challenge level here that I think people will work through, but it doesn't really take that long to kind of come to grips with it and learn how the systems work, right? So it's basically like I'm very confident with the baseline that they have here. It's just going to be kind of filling everything in and making it feel like a full game versus just like a couple of arenas and like a boss rush, right? Which again, there's nothing wrong with that. There's games that do that already, but it feels like the type of game that has a grand ambition but is really being kind of like shoved into this like lower like box that it has to play in.
Sure. Yeah, it almost feels like a game that would maybe benefit from like a Kickstarter or something to get that initial push. But no, I looks like I'm looking at it now as you're talking about it, and it does feel sort of like that. Maybe I understand the Arkham comparison. I almost feel like it's like Sifu in terms of like the way it's specifically like martial arts, like that one-on-one. But it is like, man, it's got that punchy color palette, no pun intended, obviously. And it looks nice. I mean, look, Nick has 10 hours into this game's early access. So
yeah, and I didn't even mention there's a mode called Infinite Disco that you can play where that's
Perfect.
basically where you can import your music. You can play through different tracks from the actual game that have different challenges tied to them, like defeating enemies a specific way, beating a certain amount of enemies before the song ends, stuff like that. So there's like a challenge mode, and I only mentioned it, but like we really should touch on the importing your own music, because when that does work, it is so sick, dude. Like I started just going on YouTube and pulling like a bunch of different songs. I got the famous, I don't want to spoil it yet because you haven't played it, but kind of the viral song from Alan Wake 2. I was beating up to that.
Oh, the Asgard something.
Yeah, and I grabbed that. I grabbed some other tracks from other games. I grabbed some Hi-Fi Rush tracks that are in that game. Played in there. Did some
mind fuck right there.
Some movie scenes that had very impactful music. So it's so funny.
Martha, why did you say that name?
Well,
I can see it now.
You get both like aspects, because while I was sticking to just kind of music where I was like, yeah, this would be a good fight. Oh, I just popped into my head the jellyfish rave from SpongeBob.
Oh,
there's so much good stuff that you can do. But then also, I saw a video from GameSpot a while ago where they just did like meme songs, like somebody singing like "Happy Birthday" badly in key and out of key and stuff like that. So there's a lot of potential for just this side mode for making like crazy TikToks, mods. There's a ton of potential for this game, and I just had a blast playing it, and I am very much looking forward to the full 1.0 and seeing what the whole breadth of the game ends up becoming.
Hell yeah. There's no date yet, but ladies and gentlemen, you can check out the early access for Dead as Disco from Brain Jar Games. If you want a neon drenched beat 'em up where every punch, kick, and combo syncs to the music. It's $25 right now. Not on sale, but you can also, for the streamers out there, get a $10 DLC that is a streamer-safe soundtrack, which is a nice inclusion, I suppose. But yeah, and also there's a demo that you can check out as well. And
decent,
probably at some point. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say decent early sales too. The last that I saw, they sold like 200,000 copies in early access. So I think that's a pretty good sign for an early game.
Yeah, I see that 200,000 copies sold as of like a week, a little over a week of the game being out. And it seems that Update 1, the Summer Flames tour, rolls out on June 16th. So it's out now with a new on the set list, fresh faces in the mosh pit, a setup for custom challenges, bust a move, tuning the mix. Damn, a bunch of bug fixes. So definitely check it out if you have any interest in that. Like I said, there's a demo for it out now that you can check out as well. It is Steam Deck verified. That's right. The checks from Gabe cleared. And it is Steam Next Fest. So hopefully, if I get the time, there'll be an article on Respawn Station about some demos to check out for Steam Next Fest.
Nice.
But anyway. That being said, let's switch from Dead as Disco to Dead as doorknob. Is that a
Dead as doornail?
Sure, doornail. Yeah. We're going to talk about Directive 8020. This is the newest game from Supermassive, and my written review is up on respawnstation.com. There should be, if all goes to plan, a video review as well. But let me talk about a few things here, because I want to have much to say on it. I think, and I try not to have Save Slot just be a full reiteration of everything that I wrote in my reviews. So there's a few things I do want to tackle. First of all, I didn't really process how unique of a game it is for Supermassive. Obviously, it's a Supermassive game. You pretty much, if I say that term, most people should have an idea. Like there's like certain things that come to mind that it's like, oh, it's a cinematic game. It's a horror, a celebrity cameo, multiple endings, and all of that stands true with Directive 8020. The key difference here is that it is one set in space, which, as far as I understand, unless you're talking about like Until Dawn is set on Earth and Earth is in space. Yeah, sure, sure, Ron. Okay, sure, maybe it is, but I don't know why specifically I called out Ron. I know like Brad also has been thinking about that as well. Steve, all these people are all these fuckheads. But I've alienated a quarter of this populate the listener base here. But that being said, it's the first one that takes place in space, and it's also the first one that's not like a camera that's locked down, which is like a core element of
Oh, interesting.
these games, the series, right? Like it's like the cinematic cameras that kind of sweep in as you're playing, but you don't have control over it. And this is a traditional third person horror game. Like you control the camera, and it's essential to how you play through areas because there's a lot of areas where you step in and there's a patrolling enemy that you have to avoid, and there's a lot of influences this game takes from Alien or even like Alien Isolation. I don't think it ever reaches this scare factor of like Alien Isolation or anything like that, or nor does it kind of reach the significance, I'll say, like narrative significance that I think that some of the films that it's inspired by reached. But that being said, it's a weird. I sort of say in my review that it's a middle ground, and I think where this game is sort of lost is in the space between a chin scratching think piece and a B tier horror movie that you watch for like the gory kills. It doesn't quite know what to do between the two, and I think that's where it ends up becoming a little bit less maybe like thought provoking as it can be. But that being said, uh, the Life is Strange mechanics also add a little bit of interesting layer to the kind of formula because much like Life is Strange, when someone dies or a bad decision is made, you can rewind without even having to hold up your arm to the last kind of narrative point where you can then change your decision and see how that plays out. That's only if you do a certain difficulty, which I didn't do. I kind of just was like rolling with the punches, and so
Hmm.
there was definitely times where I pressed like one wrong button and the character is gone, is dead, and it's like, oh, there's nothing I can do about that. But that being said, I don't think it necessarily retains the emotional like everything with it I mentioned during our Life is Strange review about the power of that rewind and how it maybe puts a little bit of agency in your hand. I don't really feel that in this game. I don't feel like it's part of the process here, at least for me. But I think the big thing that I want to talk about here is actually what Nick asked me, which is sort of something I didn't really mention in my review. But like, does this formula still have scope? Like this supermassive formula. I find it so odd that Supermassive isn't making Until Dawn 2. You know what I mean? Like, if anyone is supposed to, like, I don't, if anyone's supposed to make this kind of games, it's got to be the people that made it, that started this kind of trend.
Hmm.
Because it's sort of a middle ground. Like, it's not really a Telltale game, but it has a lot of those elements. And anyway, I digress about Until Dawn. I do think there is some sort of an interesting thing that they can do or show with this type of game. And look, clearly the audience is showing up to a degree where they've been able to pump these out for a good 7, 8 years now. There's off the top of my head, I know there's Man of Medan, The Quarry, obviously Directive 8020. There's
Little Hope,
Devil in Me.
Devil in Me.
Yeah,
That's another one.
yeah. So there's a they're pumping these games out. It's at a rather impressive rate. Maybe it's just like the frequency is what gets them. Like that. Maybe that's what keeps them afloat
Yeah,
in the grand scheme of things.
I'm curious because you mentioned that it's like a third person kind of thing. I did not get that impression. Maybe I just wasn't paying close enough attention to the
Sure.
trailers and stuff. I thought it was still the like same fixed camera kind of game as the other ones. Did they do anything interesting with that, or does it feel like it's a space horror game, make it third person because that's what's popular?
It's a space horror game, and I do think that making it interactive in third person makes it more like you're in control. It's your fuck ups to be made. Um, And because like then you can't blame the camera. It could be like, oh, the camera didn't show me that there's broken glass on the ground. It's kind of on you, you could have looked at.
Sure.
So I think that's where maybe I get a little bit of payoff from it. But by and large, it's stock standard third person. You enter an event and it goes into first person like Batman. And it's like very formulaic to that degree in terms of like you'll go in and you're like, oh, there's definitely going to be at some point in the game where the space horror game that has you running from an alien in vents, the vents will have an alien in it at some point. Like there's going to be something in the vents that like there's certain things that kind of you can easily call out and predict, but still, I think that while the story didn't necessarily land with me in terms of like, oh, this is thought provoking, I think there's seeds there. But at the end of the day, it really depends on like what this team wants to do. I feel like you cannot, and I would love to be proved wrong about this, but I feel like you can't go for a really narratively like weird or like intriguing premise while also having all the characters be cannon fodder. But you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
you have to have someone you root for, and I feel like in every Supermassive game, these characters suck. And it's just like, what do I care about any of these teenagers on a fucking mountain? And these space folk, like they're supposed to be, like like these smartest people because they're on this mission to save Earth. Like it's like Project Hail Mary type of situation actually, but instead of going to Tau Ceti to get a sample, you're trying to recolonize the planet. Essentially, is the premise.
Uh-huh.
And it's just like I'm watching a bunch of idiots on this fucking thing, like fucking Three
That's
Scrooges at times.
that's kind of the weird push and pull with these games is that it's not fun if you like the character to see their head get exploded by like an alien or something, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
it would kind of suck. So like I think that there's still like an element of that Until Dawn nature that they want. Like you can't love them too much because you lose the impact
sure.
of getting splattered by an asteroid, but you also can't make them too likable, or like you can't make them too hateable because they have this
You
thought-provoking
just want
story
them
that
all
you're
to die.
talking about that like you need to kind of have an avatar
Yeah,
through to experience and like ask those questions. So maybe it's just the setting and the genre of this particular game that kind of highlights that contrast a lot more.
yeah. I mean, look, as a most of their other games, I think have like a slasher tone to it, which sort of feeds into like, oh yeah, let's watch a bunch of people die in weird ways and see how far we can get, type of thing.
Mm.
But yeah, I do think that like what you kind of got it right about how maybe the serious presentation of like this space horror thing. And again, I don't want to ruin the twist, but it is actually like a really intriguing thought experiment about what's happening here. And it gets a little freaky, and then they explain it, and you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But you don't really get to ruminate on that for long. But as for if the formula itself is out of scope, I think that there is still a prime audience for this. I think it's perfect if you have friends that are willing to like pass the controller with you or watch over your shoulder, either like literally or like over the internet. Like for me, um, it adds to the experience in a way that's way better than playing it solo. Like you're just gonna get more out of it by playing it with friends like that.
Hmm.
But that being said, um, I do think that something maybe typical horror is kind of the zone that it should be in. Also, speaking of, well, there's a few random thoughts I'll just throw out there. It is sort of like a response station podcast sort of segment, I guess, of talking about news. But I saw that Halloween, we got a press release recently that Halloween, the video game that's coming out, that's like supposed to be an asymmetrical multiplayer game, will have a story mode or something. So something I want to look into there because again, like. What is that? What does that mean?
Hmm.
Even Dead by Daylight, I think, is just some talk about stories coming to that. But something in terms of like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre type of thing with a story is where I think like this studio would really kind of excel. And also, before I lose my train of thought, Nick, do you have anything else about Directive 8020?
I just had one other random thing because you mentioned, passing the controller or playing with friends. I know that was like a feature in some of the other Dark Pictures games. Is that like built into the game, like hand off the controller, or is that something like you guys were all on Discord and like we're just like Scouts Honor passing the controller?
So it's local game. It's a local only on Directive 8020. So we played it solo. I was just playing it, but like in multiplayer, there is a multiplayer option. Like when you load up the game in the start menu, there's solo and multiplayer, and that will prompt the controller being changed, exchanged.
Okay.
If you're in person, yeah. So again, it makes sense for this formula. Like, I understand now that they know how important it is because they have it baked into the game.
Sure.
But the thought that I had was, has there ever been, and I thought about this while you're talking about Dead as Disco, has there ever been a racing game with rhythm mechanics? You know what I mean? Like Need for Speed, right? But like the music starts at the start of the match, and then if you want the perfect boost, you got to get it on the beat. You know what I mean? And then maybe maybe that'll be a really hard game to make. Because I was thinking
there's some indie games that are like toying with the idea. I can't tell you the name of it, but there's one that I've seen like GIFs from that's like, it's hyper cartoony and not realistic at all, but like it has like your car like flipping and grinding on rails and stuff. And I think there's some music component with that game. But I think it's something that, indies are toying with, but I can't recall any like specific big budget AAA racing game.
Sure. Okay.
Baby Driver video game.
Well,
somebody get on that.
Yeah, now we need to think about it. You mean Stuntman Hollywood, right? Like that's what you're referring to. All right, now it's back to you. What do you want to talk about more about Hi-Fi Rush?
Yes, I do. Hi-Fi Rush. So this game came out a couple years ago. You can read my review on respawnstation.com. I don't remember if we talked about it on the podcast. Maybe
we did, because I also played it at the time.
Okay, and kind of a random thing to be talking about right now, but after a very, very long delay, basically limited run games came out with pre-orders for a physical version of Hi-Fi Rush. Some other retailers in Japan were doing the physical as well, and I recently got my copy, like I said, after quite a long time, and I, wasn't initially going to sit down and replay the game, but then I just played, I was like, I don't want to get into anything tonight. I'm just going to install it. I'll boot it up, play one mission. I got sucked in like Al Pacino. I full playthrough on normal, went back, did trophy cleanup. Essentially, I didn't get a full 100% whenever I played it on Game Pass originally.
Fucking look at this fraud. No platinum? You joking?
Well, I didn't get it on Xbox.
0.
But what I did do on PlayStation was get my account back to my same achievement completion that the Xbox version on PC had. So, which is... it's pretty full content exploration. The only thing that I haven't really done are some pretty challenging, challenges in the wall of challenges. There's like 200 challenges or something, and some of them are like beat bosses without taking a hit and stuff like that. That I don't have a good brain for, so I can't really do that. But I got pretty much, all the achievements. I went through the arcade challenge mode, which was the post-launch mode that they added, did all the challenges in there, played Rhythm Tower, unlocked all the costumes, did all the collectibles, that sort of stuff. And Hi-Fi Rush, it's a game that it's a rare game that feels like it was just kind of made for me, right? Like every once in a while you get a game where it's like every single aspect of this feels like they just asked me what I wanted to see in a game and they just put it in the game. And
yep.
It's such a magical feeling when you find a game like that, because playing through it this time, I noticed a couple more cracks and stuff. Beforehand, I thought it was like basically near perfect. This time, there's a couple other cracks that I noticed. But again, even after like another... like 2 playthroughs essentially of going through like normal playthrough and then going back and doing collectibles and stuff, I'm just like, man, this is like one of the most well-designed and like solidly executed games that's come out in like this decade. And it's the music, it's the writing is actually genuinely funny. The vocal performances are incredible.
Yeah.
While I'm talking about this, I have to bring this up because I completely forgot about it and it made me crack up. So there's, you play as Chai and you have your band of compatriots with Peppermint and hold on, like Cinnamon and Macaron, those kind of people. And then a lot of the characters that you interact with in the game are robots. There's a lot of enemies that are robots, but there's also a lot of these robots that are just kind of like employees of Vandalay. And they kind of talk with, human voices and stuff, but, roboticized. And there's some really, really funny interactions and stuff that you come across with these robots. Specifically, about halfway through the game, they introduce these engineer robots that kind of talk like surfer bros. They're like, yo, like, what do you do? Like that sort of thing. Yeah, and there's this incredible one. It's one of the smallest moments in the game. But you just walk into this room and there's one of these robots behind a glass window. He's like smashed up against the window. There's no doors into this hallway or whatever. It's just part of set dressing. You can go and talk to it and he goes, man, how am I gonna get out of here? And it's just like the stupidest little throwaway thing, but I busted out laughing and I was like, man, I just love how many little moments that you just stumble across, and it's just like little things of like them complaining about, something that either you did or that you didn't do. Like they give flavor to all the boss characters that you come up against, and it's just a surprisingly funny game that has moments of heart that hit when they need to. This game's not going to make you like bawl your eyes out or anything, but like when the game has to slow down and have like a nice sincere moment, it does, and it just hits so hard. And then eventually they'll play into a great track or something like that. You get into that flow state that I was talking about with Dead as Disco, where the combat just kind of clicks together. You're on autopilot, but you're just like in the moment vibing to it, and like all that sort of stuff feeds together into just this incredible game. So I had a lot of fun playing it. It was definitely worth the revisit. Glad to have it physical so I can have it on the shelf and not have to worry about.
Do they go ahead.
I was just going to say, not having to worry about if it gets delisted or something weird, like the music tracks get removed for whatever reason. So it's a great game. I don't have a top 10 fully formed for myself, but I think that there's a pretty strong case that Hi-Fi Rush would probably be in my top 10 somewhere, like of all time. I trying to put recency bias aside, I legitimately love this game and can't stop gushing about it.
Hell yeah. Do they still have that little cameo from the guy from Evil Within?
Mm-hmm. Which is even funnier now because I hadn't played Evil Within before playing it, and it's so good.
Yeah. Very excited for the sequel to that. I played it when it first came out, and it is just it's just I'm not even a rhythm guy. Like again, I know Nick well enough. Like when he says, "Yeah, this is a game," if you consulted Nick and made it like that, that is a lot of Hi-Fi Rush. I'm not like, it should not be the case for me, but it's still like, I think it's a testament to just how good of a game it is, that it's still like, even if you're not into the rhythm mechanics stuff of it necessarily, like that's not what hooks you initially, there's still solid gameplay, good characters, and then I think the music kind of lulls you into that flow state that Nick was talking about, so you can kind of get into the groove much easier.
One other thing about it real quick that was unique to this playthrough is they are now published or owned by Krafton. And basically every single instance of Bethesda or Xbox Studios mentioned in the game, the credits, anything, has basically been removed and replaced with Krafton. So that was just kind of like a weird, like, interesting thing where it's like it definitely used to say Bethesda Softworks presents, but now it says Krafton presents. So it's a small thing, but it's like Yeah, they really just kind of gutted all that connection out of there, and it is a crafting game now.
Control F Bethesda delete.
Pretty much.
But I really want to highlight one thing that Nick kind of talked about in his Hi-Fi Rush review, which is that it's sort of magical when a game really sticks. And my review for this next game that I'm going to talk about is not up yet. I've not written it, but the first paragraph, part of the first paragraph, reads like this. One of the best things about experiencing new art, be it an album, a movie, or a video game, is that you never know when you'll fall in love next. Sometimes, over the course of listening to an album or playing a game, you start to realize that it was exactly what you wanted, and you didn't even know it until you were in it. And that's exactly how I felt playing 007 First Light. This is
Woo!
one of my favorite games of all time as well. And it's one of those beautiful feelings that as I was playing it, I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is what I've been wanting it.
This is
and it
peak.
slowly escalates and it starts right away. I mean, look, there's a lot of things I want to say in my written review, and since it's not written, a lot of this will just kind of be off the top of the head, rambling. Not off the top of the head. There's notes in front of me, but there's I'm assembling them together. But regardless, it is solidly one of the best games I've ever played. I think what IO has done here is like the best treatment or formula that you could apply to James Bond. And it sort of feels so like when you're playing it, it sort of feels so obvious. Like, oh no, duh. Like that would make so much sense. But no one has really done this for Bond. And it is like almost every aspect of this game, I think, is really good, and there's still room for improvement in a potential sequel. That hoping that Amazon doesn't get their grubby little hands all over it and mess it up. But look, let's talk about we'll talk about the opening. It has a fantastic cut to credits. It does have the classic James Bond song, a new original song by starts with an L, and I can't remember if it's Lord or Lara Del Rey. I think it's Lord, but I could be wrong. Let me look it up. I have it in my liked songs.
Sure.
Lana Del Rey. Okay, it's Lana Del Rey. But yeah, it's a fantastic cut to credits. To start the game off, and it sort of acts as a origin story for James Bond, which you never really got. And I think it does a fantastic job of setting up this character of James Bond, this arrogant, kind of new agent that has a chip on his shoulder, a womanizer to a degree, but at the same time, he has like a natural charm where you're kind of like, yeah, I kind of like the guy still, He can be a dick sometimes, but he's kind of nice. And I think that's a huge kind of testament as well to the voice actor who does a great job at bringing this, version of James Bond to life. So much so that I think like that this game or really does, I think, fall into the canon of James Bond. Like I would put this next to any James Bond movie and say it is just as good of a James Bond experience versus like I wouldn't necessarily put was it Bloodfire or Bloodstone? No, Bloodstone and Nightfire. Yeah, I was mixing up. Like I wouldn't necessarily put these as like, oh, you have to play this. This is 100% is right up kind of any James Bond fan alley, but at the same time, you don't even have to like James Bond. I think if you hate James Bond, there might be a problem because you can't escape. There's so many James Bond things in it. But like if you're just, if you like James Bond, or even if you're just in for a nice third person action game, again, this really feels like a really perfectly cohesive ball that we're talking about in this episode. Nick was talking a lot about how the Arkham style combat of Dead as Disco. First Light has incredibly satisfying Arkham style combat, and it's one of those things where I'll try to play through a level as stealthily as I can, and it's so much fun to stealth in this game. You have kind of distract, like you have the smartwatch that you get that is so intuitive because the smartwatch lets you look at things in the environment and you can either like, cause electronics to go off, or you can tag, like you can like, throw a dart or shoot a dart at like an enemy to like make them sick and have it to leave their, post so that you can sneak by them.
Mhm.
There's all these kind of clever things where, it lets you decide how you want to approach an obstacle. Like I think a great example of this is right at towards the start of the game, which by the way, it's a hefty game. It's like 15 to 20 hours. And it's a meaty single player experience, no multiplayer at all, even though it is like you have to sync to online stuff. But it's fully single player and it's a story based game. And about like a 2 hours or so into the game, when you're essentially going through the training to become a 007 agent. This is a minor spoiler, but I think it kind of shows you the level of like what we're working with here. But essentially, first of all, it's the first time that I can think of in a video game where I was in a montage. I don't know when the last time I played through a montage in a video game, but like in this game, as Bond is becoming James Bond, Bond is becoming 007, you have this montage gameplay sequence where you have to like mash the button to do push-ups. Then you have to like a shootout test where you have to like hit the targets, and then it'll like without a beat, like when there's no loading screen or anything, without a beat, it'll just switch to then you're in the car and you have to race around the track to set your best time. It's like, and it keeps cutting back and forth to like give you the sense of kind of improvement and energy that is just awesome. But in this particular sequence, you have to go get the red flag. There's a red flag at the top of this obstacle course. There's armed guards that are like, your colleagues or whatever. But you have to get past them to get to the that flag. And so what I did was, like natural thing, I like looked around, find the best course of action, use my gadgets to get up top, and it took me a few minutes. But then I find out that you can just like, because you see the building, you can just go outside the building and walk through where like the instructors and stuff are, and just walk past them. And like as you're walking past them, they'll be like, "Oh, of course Bond is doing this," and you can just walk right up to the flag and pick it up, and the game doesn't punish you; it just moves on. Like it just continues on with the next part of the montage. Stuff like that. It just feels like it really lets you craft your experience of James Bond. And even now talking about it, I'm like, "Fuck, those are good times. We're back in boot camp."
That's definitely some of that Hitman influence coming in, I think,
Yes.
in like multiple ways to tackle situations, not even just like, oh, what gadget do I want, but like actually thinking about the location, the level design, AI pathing, like trying to think outside of the box like a character like James Bond would actually do, which is just so sick.
I think the biggest thing I can say, or sorry, I think the best thing I can say about 007 First Light is that a lot of people felt that it's sort of, oh, you're taking the Hitman formula and you're applying a James Bond coat of paint to it. But I actually feel that after playing First Light, that all of the Hitman games were practices. They're trial runs to getting First Light right. Because it does so much of everything that the Hitman does, it does it to a better level. Like a better fidelity, a better pace. There's, we'll talk about the gameplay as well, because the combat. Obviously, you have the regular kind of attack buttons, but then you can like do combos on enemies. You can use environment to like, if you're in a fight and just like in a like I guess a street fight, because I've been in so many of these guys, I just kind of know how it works. But like if you see a mug or a glass on the table or a keyboard, you can just grab it and throw it at the enemies to stun them for a second to close the gap.
That's the stuff
like
that looks
like,
so sick. I watched some gameplay and like some reviews, and just the amount of contextual stuff that like you'll like pick up or use as distraction items. I love how tactile everything seems to feel with this game.
Yeah, and same thing, like it does a thing that like Sleeping Dog does, which I really like. But you can like grapple a guy and then like charge him into like a table or like any environmental thing, and it has not entirely like a custom kill or hit, but like it's like tweaked to the thing you're hitting. Like if it's a
Sure.
desk, you'll kind of bash his head in or whatever. If
Hmm.
it's a cabinet, you'll kind of push him in or something to adapt to it. But yeah, the combat is so punchy and fun. There's, I mean, look, you know, if you've been watching just or you've been reading Respawn Station or you're watching the Respawn Station podcast, I really love title cards and like chapters. Like when a game or a movie has chapters, I'm like, okay, I'm seated. This game not only has chapters, Nick, it has such incredible title cards. Like it has the satisfaction of a good title card multiple times and it's kind of like diegetic. So you'll just like crest a hill at some point and all of a sudden the music it'll go into the wide bars and then the text will show up and it's like the chapter name and it's something like no time to die or something some
Hmm.
kind of title like that. um it's yeah, it's just so clean. And I think that the big, again, if you're not a James Bond fan, which I don't necessarily think I'm a diehard, but I have watched over half of the movies at least, and I've read a few of the books as well. And I think that the you know it pays homage to a lot of what came before it. A lot of the movies, and especially when you're in Q Lab, for example, which is sort of where you go to get upgrades and stuff like that in the game, which again makes sense with the canon of James Bond. Uh, there's a lot of little things you'll pick up on of characters or like like NPCs will kind of be like, oh, remember this, or like oh the jetpack, like little kind of references to old James Bond stuff, but it's not bogged down by all of the references. It's just part of the experience. And the game takes place in 2026, so they've established that have been previous 007s and stuff that
Hmm.
now you're just the newest one. And oh, and the last thing I'll say is that the characters of all the things, obviously in the James Bond 007 game, James Bond has to be the main character, the main focus, and he certainly is. But I was surprised at how the characters grew and how much I cared for them by the end of the game. There's a lot of interesting things that this game does. Things that I like. Man, like whenever you finish the game, we'll have a spoiler conversation about it because there's things that I think are so brilliant about the game because they set up a character to be one way, and I'll say this in as vague as way as I can, and it's the first half of the game, so I'm not really ruining much, but they set up this character, and you see this character, and you're like, oh, I understand this character is going to be this because of like the trope that the character seems to be playing into.
Sure.
A little bit later, you're like, oh no, this character is not to the trope that I expected, but it's still like, oh, I understand what's going on, cool. And then they have a gameplay sequence to reinforce that feeling that it's not the character is not at all like what the trope is.
Hmm.
And then they do something to that character, and it's like, oh, that's I care now, and I'm like invested somehow because of all the like they're so busy focusing on like distracting you through this narrative that you're not really thinking about like, oh man, these characters I kind of like these characters, like despite how they initially start out, they grow on you.
Hmm.
And some really memorable characters, globetrotting to the fullest degree. It is an awesome game. I highly recommend it. I know for a fact that I will be replaying this game. Um, and if it's any consolation, Alexa was puzzling. She was working on this like 1,000 piece puzzle on the dining table while I was playing the game. And Nick, I play most of my games here, like on this monitor that I have here. This game, I lugged my PS4 or PS5 upstairs, and I barely use it, but I have the thing where uh, it's the sensor that matches the background lights to what's going
Sure.
on screen.
Yeah.
And I was lost in this fucking game. And but like, as I was doing it, Alexa was puzzling, and she'd just be like, "That was a good one." Like just while she's listening, she'll just pick up and like, "Oh, like that was good," or like she'll just kind of like watch sometimes instead of puzzling because it was just so cinematic.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I cannot talk about it enough. My review, I'm sure, will be very strong. But yeah, 100%. One of the best games of the year. One of my favorite games of all time. 007 First Light. Highly recommend.
Nice. The one detail that I did see that I really like is when you're in a area where you can kill, how it has license to kill on the
License to
screen.
kill.
I think
Yeah,
that's such
yeah,
a
yeah.
clean UI element to include there.
And it shows up like because majority of the game you're not allowed to kill people. Like it's a taboo because that's not what what the character is.
Hmm.
But when it does happen, it gives you a nice little sting, and then like a license to kill shows up in the middle of the screen, and it goes up top.
Uh,
Yeah, Nick, it's I'll say my piece now, but whenever you play this thing, it's you're certainly in for a ride.
yeah, I'm curious to give it a try at some point. I wouldn't call myself a James Bond fan, not for not wanting to be one. It's just I've not seen most of the movies. I think I've seen like two, and so it's like
Sure.
I really wouldn't even.
Was No
pick
Time
up
to Die
on-
one of the movies you've seen?
No,
It's the last one with Daniel
I
Craig.
saw Casino Royale, and I saw
Okay.
one of the S ones,
Quantum Solace,
Skyfall, or
Spectre.
which
Okay,
one of
okay,
those
sure.
ones. So I enjoyed them, and like I said, it's not through lack of like trying or whatever. It's just I've never really gone out of my way to go watch them, and so
Yeah, we'll do a watch party for James Bond movies before you start First Light, just to get you acclimated. I will say that the books are a little bit different. They maybe compared to the old movies, but the books are like, I don't know. It's weird because I found out that like the James Bond isn't supposed to be the idyllic man because he has a flaw, and his flaw is his misogyny. But like the misogyny is pretty heavy-handed in the books, so it's
sure.
like I kind of understand, but also like, man, he really said some weird shit about women. So, but he's evolved, and I think that this is the kind of best iteration of this character, where he's edgy, but is still a lot, not like entirely problematic.
sure.
Yeah,
That's all you can hope for.
yeah, essentially. So I'm hoping that Amazon again doesn't fuck up the sequels because technically, and again, another fucking mind fuck. Double Some First Light is technically a self-published indie game because IO put it out themselves. That was because the contract with Amazon hadn't gone through with MGM, but now it has gone through. So sequels for First Light will kind of go through them. Hopefully, it'll be like a hands-off, do your thing type of deal because this team just, they absolutely nailed it. I think.
I mean, they'd be dumb
But
not to.
speaking of-
but at the same time, like,
Yeah.
at least this one turned out as good as it could be if this is the only one we get.
Yeah. Worst case scenario is that they're rebooting the franchise for the movie, and like they'll have it be a tie-in to the movie. Or, like it'll like, yeah, James Bond, you can make a James Bond game, but like have him look like the actor now instead of the voice actor. Stuff like that I could see rearing its ugly head, but
Right.
but no, that's enough about my epic single player campaign. How is your epic Doom single Slayer campaign? Boom, just thought of that right now.
Yeah, Doom the Dark Ages. I've been wanting to play this game for a while, and I've had it installed for a while through Game Pass, and I've just kind of been waiting for the appropriate time to start. And wouldn't you know it, I'm having a blast playing this game. It's definitely a different game, which we kind of talked about, I think, off the air, about how like each of the games in this modern id Doom trilogy with 2016, Eternal, and Dark Ages all kind of have their own thing, right? Their Doom 2016 and Eternal are kind of closer as far as like visual aesthetics go, but gameplay wise they're pretty different, and gameplay wise Dark Ages and aesthetic wise is actually fairly different. I'm about 8 chapters in out of 22, so I'm about a third of the way through the game at this point, and it's kind of funny. I have like sort of a sub theme with the games that I brought today, and all of them is like how sick it is to do combat to good music. And while the music in the Dark Ages, obviously because there was that whole dust up with the Mick Gordon stuff and Bethesda with Doom Eternal, he is not providing any music for this game. But the music that is here still, I would say, gets the point across. Mick Gordon's in a league of his own, so like it's
that was actually one of the notes that I had written down to ask you was, does the music still hit? Because like that's the thing. You say the words Doom to me at this point, and I hear the like it just starts going on in the back of my head.
It does hit. It doesn't hit nearly as hard as some of those like 2016 and Eternal moments, but there are some tracks in here when you get into the flow. Again, flow, that's going to be a key word for this episode. Dark Ages, I think you get into a flow. You definitely get into a flow in 2016 and Eternal, but this, with the way that the shield saw works and the way that combat encounters are kind of designed, it's definitely a lot more of like bobbing and weaving, coming in, parrying with the shield, blasting an enemy, throwing the shield and catching it and stuff. You kind of get into this rhythm, and the music is less I'm gonna scream at you and more like I'm just gonna I'm a train barreling down towards you. Like it's slower, but not in a way to where the game feels slow. You still feel fast and nimble, and like if you want to, you can jump around. You again throw the chainsaw shield and call it back like Captain America, and you can do like this dash move where you'll like surge forward and hit enemies, and like it's in typical Doom fashion, right? So if you charge forward, hit an enemy, 10 enemies next to them also explode from the impact of how fast you were going and stuff. So they definitely do a lot in the gameplay front. And basically, when you hit that flow state, when the music's going and you have just the chaos of these Doom battles unfolding in front of you, it's still extremely fun to try to, work through and solve, I guess. The Doom games feel like they are combat puzzles in a way, where it's like, okay, I have all these enemies here. I have to figure out who takes priority. Is it these weak enemies that are just kind of poking me? Is it the giant enemy that I know I have to like parry multiple times to, try to get my openings in here? And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. The narrative is a lot more of a focus in this game. This game has like actual like cutscenes and stuff that is trying to tell a story. And the actual story between, the makers and the humans and the demons, I'm not super interested in. I'm going to be completely honest. What I am interested in is the characterization of the Doomslayer in this game. This might be the strongest characterization of the characters so far, at least in this first third. And that's saying a lot compared to, 2016 and Eternal. I think of in Eternal, and I think there's a bit of it in 2016 also, where like there's a part where, you're walking through all these, Space Marines and stuff, and the Doomslayer just grabs the key card around the one guy's neck and just drags him over to unlock the door and stuff. Think about all those like kind of badass moments, and then it's like at a regular interval we get like a new one with this Doomslayer.
Nice.
So like I'll give you kind of the premise to kind of paint a picture here. The Doomslayer at the start of the game is being controlled by the makers, and he's sort of this super weapon essentially. Like he's the tac nuke that they're going to call in to clear out the battlefield when they need to really push back against these invading demon hordes.
And that's isn't that the story you get from Doom 2016, is that like he went, like he's also the thing that scares them the most, which is why they kept him locked up, and then we opened the right that's the setup.
That's essentially the start of 2016. But in here he has this like tether on, and like his eyes are glowing yellow, like he's definitely like under some sort of mind control, right? But even in the beginning here, you start to see it like waver a little bit. Like his eyes kind of flicker, and like you get a moment where he snaps out of it, but then they crank it back up. He's back under control, and they just kind of send him out to kind of do his dirty work, right? You'll get like the opening shot. It's from the trailers where they like shoot him down out of the space station, and then he just like looks up, looks badass with the fur on him and the shotgun and the shield and whatever.
Yeah.
So they have moments like that. But then I just kind of want to talk you through this moment that I got to play last night, where it's at the start of another mission. This tether is weakening to the point where now the tether is shut off. And he's like, they have him in this like containment room that has like a shield around it or whatever. And the tether comes off and he starts to step forward, and it starts sending these alerts to the makers, behind the wall or whatever. And they all kind of turn around like semi-worried, and they see him walking through. They press this button, and like all these giant guns come out of the walls pointing straight at him, like cannons essentially. He just keeps walking, and then he just starts punching the shield, and he just like repeatedly is punching it. And like they all start talking. It's like, what do we do? It's like the tether's weakening, and you just hear this automated alert of the shield is like lowering in power with every punch. And they're like, okay, well, I think the Slayer wants to, be free now. And so they essentially, fire him out or whatever. And then you go and do a mission. But there's this really sick moment that it builds up to, where you kind of have like the big bad of the game. I can't even really tell you his name. It's some demon word, essentially. And this other character kind of having a tussle that I won't spoil. But you hear this noise, and the camera pans to the wall. And it's kind of like in Star Wars when they have like a lightsaber cutting through a wall or whatever. But it's the Doomslayer's chainsaw shield. He's like cutting up through it, and then you just see like the hands pull the door apart, and his head comes in, and you get this melee weapon that's a flail,
Johnny,
like a spike ball on a chain. And you just get this shot of it slamming on the ground, and then he just slowly starts walking towards the big bad. And even the bad guy at this moment, he's like, "Oh my god, like what's gonna happen?" And it's this moment that I think characterizes this version of the Slayer so well, is that like he's almost depicted as like how a villain would be depicted. Like everybody's scared shitless, but like you're the hero character. And so like there's just all these little details that kind of feed into it outside of the gameplay that just make it feel like he's such a force of nature and so incredibly awesome that just like his mere presence affects everybody around him, which I think is really fun to watch, is what I'm enjoying about like the storytelling in this one.
I think it goes to say that obviously, like we love new, weird, original IP. We were talking about Dead as Disco earlier, but I think there is something to say from both of our experiences, both with my First Light and Doom: The Dark Ages, where like getting an established character that how this character, the core functions of this character, and just not having to worry about setting up the necessarily like, here's how he came to be like this, and you're just like, here's the character doing the damn thing. That's like, it's so fun to just watch and let alone like to play and be a part of. I do think it's interesting game choice though to go back to the prequel. Do you feel that like this is the guy that ends up becoming the? I guess you're you still have 2/3 of the game to run through, but
yeah. It definitely feels like a prequel, but like it's also kind of a weird thing with the aesthetic choice in Dark Ages, because it kind of reminds me of Warhammer in a way, where it is Dark Ages and there's like medieval knights and stuff like that, but it is also future. Like there's still power armor, there's still firearms, like laser cannons, that sort of thing. And so while it is a prequel, it doesn't really feel like a prequel to 2016 and Eternal, if that makes sense. Like tonally it does feel different, and like it's weird. I'm going back and forth on it, because it's like in some ways it does feel like a prequel, in other ways it just feels like they wanted to make a medieval themed Doom game, and this was what they decided to go with. So I'm a little bit too early to say where the narrative will take that. Maybe it'll feel more earned later on if there's like more connections that tie it to where you end up in 2016. I could see, some avenues for that, but the gameplay, I think, it's what's kind of funny because like it's a lot of it is about this sort of shield parry mechanic. It's the big new thing that you do. All of the like green enemy attacks that come out, you can parry. It's not a very strict parry. That was something I was kind of worried about going into it. It's like, okay, how like hardcore is this going to be? Because some of the fights in Eternal, I remember, really kind of push you, like with all the stuff you have to balance, all the different.
Sure.
I have to shoot my grenade at this enemy. I have to use this weapon on this enemy. It can get like kind of a lot. And I was like, I don't know how we're going to add parries into that mix and have it feel less, complicated.
Sure. Not overwhelming. Yeah.
But it's a very freeing parry. Like you have a wide window and you can even adjust that in the settings if you want it to be more strict or more forgiving. But what I find is a lot of the fights, it's a lot more like bobbing and weaving and moving around the environment versus like overwhelming your enemies, where I feel like the last couple games were.
Sure.
With this, it's like I'm playing on a slightly higher difficulty than I think I did on Eternal in 2016. So that might be part of it too. But like I feel like a lot of my fights are a lot of just like fire and things happening, and it's like split-second reactions of being like, okay, parry this, parry the follow-up, okay, now I can shoot my shotgun, now I can throw the shield and stun the enemy or whatever. It's you get a lot of that same impact of like clearing out a big group of enemies, but I guess the way I'll describe it is the game feels flatter, and that's not an insult or anything like that. It's just that Eternal has you going off bounce pads. You're using the chainsaw or the meat hook, which is like the grappling hook, to like zip around enemies, and you're doing all these crazy acrobatics. Whereas Dark Ages feels like your combat plane is just like flat, right? Like it's a lot of like wide formations of enemies that you can like eliminate in a single go, or you hit it like an explosive barrel and you're wiping out like a giant enemy. And it's just like a different flavor and pace of combat than I think I'm used to with 2016 or Eternal, even though I haven't played those games, since they came out or whatever. It's just a different flavor, but it's fun. I'm enjoying it. It's as the game is going on and I'm getting new weapons that do different things, or progressing in skill trees that give me different abilities, the combat's kind of opening up a lot more and I'm enjoying it a lot more. It's a little bit confined at the start, but for instance, I'll give you an example here. There's I don't know what it's called, but you can think of it as like an SMG that you get. It's obviously, adorned with skulls and sharp metal and stuff like that, but it shoots like these nails essentially. And you can get a skill unlocked in the skill tree where if you shoot for like, we'll say 5 seconds at an enemy, all the nails will build up and then the enemy will start to glow. And once the enemy is glowing, if you throw the shield at them, it will act as a pin cushion and it'll blow all the nails out and damage the enemies around.
Oh,
so you can kind of strategize and be like, okay, there's a lot of fodder enemies here. I'm going to focus on the big guy, throw the shield, and it's going to take out all the enemies around it.
Dang.
You also get like the shotgun, obviously, the super shotgun, famous in Doom. You can upgrade that, and so that enemies have armor in this game, and you can blow off armor with the upgraded shotgun, sort of like 2016 and Eternal. Like lighting enemies on fire will give you armor versus health. So there's still some of that back and forth kind of strategy that you approach the game with, but they've just kind of tweaked things around and changed things in a way that it feels fresh and fun while not feeling completely unfamiliar, if that makes sense.
Dang. I mean, you've definitely talked this thing up, man. It's been on my list, but obviously I need to get through Eternal first. But I guess it is a prequel, so I suppose it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
that
it's fun.
how it works.
There's definitely parts in it that you will be like, "Damn, that's badass." Like
Yeah, that's
it
exactly what
checks
I'm
the
hoping for.
boxes. I just don't know. And again, this is kind of like the general consensus. I feel it's like I don't know if this will supersede Eternal necessarily. At the same time, Eternal is like such a high bar that it's like I don't even think anything they could have done would have really exceeded that game.
Maybe I
So
should play Dark Ages first. It is interesting because it seems like Xbox's strategy here is make a prequel. Then you don't have to convince people to play the other ones. You can just convince them to get into the game first. Because obviously we have Dark Ages, we have E-Day coming out later this year. So we'll see how that pays off. But yeah, definitely it's on my list to check out. Um, and also as a before we round up the Dark Ages conversation, there is a newly announced story expansion for the first time I think ever in Doom, that's coming out in July.
Eternal
Is it the
had
first
a
time,
2-part expansion called The Ancient
Oh,
Gods.
okay.
So this isn't technically
Oh,
the
right,
first
right.
one, but yes, this is an expansion.
Actually,
of the
chronologically,
game.
it is the first one, Nick. Okay,
Fair.
chronologically, it is the first. I'm never wrong. But yeah, July 7th is when the Revelations DLC will come out. Revelations, a great name for a bunch of things. Assassin's Creed, Final Fantasy. Just Revelations everywhere.
Resident Evil.
Damn, yeah, Resident Evil. That's perfect. But yeah, check it out. Hopefully, I'll get to Doom soon. But right now, the Game Pass pick that I'm going through, Nick, is Forza Horizon 6.
Yeah,
And I
I
won't say
want
much
to hear
about.
about this because I'm so curious.
Are you really?
I am because I've kind of stayed
Okay.
away from stuff. I watched like one review I think when it first came out, and I'm like, it looks like Forza. It looks like I'm gonna have fun. I'll put it on the back burner for now.
It's it's exactly that. It's that like it's no surprise that this game looks fantastic, right? Like, I don't need to rehash all that stuff. Everything that I think is strong and like functional in a Forza Horizon game, how the cars control, how it looks, it's all the same. It's just the map is different. We're in Japan for some reason, whether it be Assassin's Creed or Forza Horizon. Japan is the location that people want to go digitally, and so Japan is a cool backdrop for this. I do find that I'm about like 5-6 hours, I think, into Forza Horizon 6, and man, I really do think that after a while the maps just start to blur together, and there's no like distinction between one and the other at a point for me. And I like look, obviously, if I'm in Tokyo City in Forza Horizon 6, I know that it's going to be different from like the locations in actually in 8.5 hours, according to my stats, is how much I'm into Forza Horizon 6. But it was 19 out of 57 achievements, so not too bad. But um, other than like those key areas, most of it just feels like I'm playing. Like if you drop me into a random place in Forza, I would not be able to tell you if it was Forza Horizon 6, 5, or 4. I think they all look fantastic. They all look, oh look, woods, and there's a road cutting through the woods.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, whatever I can, or that initial kind of hesitance of like, oh, it kind of feels like it's something that I've experienced before, made it so that the intro that is like the typically like welcome to Horizon, we're about to race to the festival and we're in Japan, like that whole section was like, okay, I get it, I've seen. And it's also part of like what they showed off in the gameplay,
Right.
and so initially I wasn't really into the game, but man, again, like 8.5 hours in, I find it to be the game that in the interim right now between like big games that I'm playing, right, it's the game that I go to. It's absolutely perfect for listening to podcasts and stuff. I've listened to every single Jason Schreier video while playing Forza Horizon 6. So there's stuff like that. But overall, it looks great. It sounds great. It's Forza Horizon, but now it's in a new map. And so if it's been a few years, you will. I think it's a good one to kind of revisit the formula. I will say as well, two really random notes that I had. These are the only two notes I have left. Is that I'm surprised at how fast the slow-mo ramp jumps got old for me in this game.
Oh.
Where there came a point where I was like, after like 2 hours, I was like, really? Is this still cool? I thought we were fine earlier,
uh,
but which was a strange experience. And man, I will say, say what you will about me, but I did kind of at times miss Crew Motorfest because I was like, boy, there's this fucking mountain between me and the target. It would be great if I could just turn into a plane and just fly over or something, or like, I can imagine like jumping off this bridge and then turning into a boat and then riding as a boat under the water, stuff like that. But anyway, I digress. It's good. I do think that last thing I'll say, kind of off the top of my head, they did change the way that you find cars and stuff. In terms of like the hidden cars, they're not just like in barns. That when you approach an area that has a treasure car, it'll give you an alert, like a hint saying, "Hey, check out these waterfalls." Maybe and so you have to go to the waterfall area, and there's like you'll find the car there. So yeah, it's cool. In previous Forza Horizon games, could you buy cars on the street?
I don't know. I've only played 5, remember. So it might. I don't think you could do it in 5, but it might be in one of the older ones.
But essentially, you're driving around the map, and like similar to how you'll just see a race that you can start, you'll see and mascots to hunt and stuff like that, destroy. You'll see like just cars, like used cars, and you can just pull up to them, and you can buy them like on the location, and they'll be like a little bit like 10-15% cheaper than if you bought them like on the menus, like through the Horizon game thing. So yeah, cool.
The one thing that
what were you about to say?
I'm kind of like concerned, I guess, with Forza Horizon is something that is a silly concern. I recognize that, but it's a concern that I have with a lot of PlayStation first party games, surprisingly enough, which is like God of War Ragnarok or Horizon or any of these games that, I watch reviews of, and it's like, yeah, it looks really high quality. It looks good. I maybe enjoyed, the previous game in the series, Spider-Man. That's the other one I was thinking of, was Spider-Man 2. Sure. It's like, I know I'll like it, but I'm in no rush to play it. And it's like, I'll just get to it at some point. And that's kind of like how I feel with Forza Horizon 6, where it's like I was just like I didn't think it would review poorly by any means, but it's like I heard like a lot of people be like, "Yep, it's Forza. It's really great. You could say it's the best racing game ever put out," and few people would argue with it. And it's like, okay, I'm glad I know it's good.
I did fall through the map once, so I'm just saying. Go ahead.
So it's just that like that sense of urgency has like kind of left, but at the same time it's still there a little bit, because in between me playing Forza Horizon 5 and now I got into like the Grand Tour and watching clips from Top Gear and stuff. So it's like arguably I'm like more into cars than I have ever been. I'm still not like a car guy, like, but it's arguably I have more interest, and probably when I do play 6 I'll appreciate it even more than I did 5. So it's just kind of like this weird spot that I'm in. And like we were talking about it off the air also, it's like I also don't want to put it off too much and get it like right next to GTA, because that's going to be a lot of big open world driving at the same time.
I agree. Well, so off of GTA, I will say that, I'll share the comment that I had. And this is a genuine reaction that I had while playing Forza Horizon 6, which was I was racing through a particular point, open world, not like doing a race actively. But I was just kind of driving around, and I was like, man, this game looks so nice, just kind of appreciating the sights. And I was like, it'd be crazy if I could just like pull the car over and get out right now and then just like walk around. And then I was like, yeah, that would be cool. And I was like, wait, that's GTA 6. Like that's around the corner. So yeah, I'm looking forward, I think, in a weird way, and I do agree that there is some crossover. I would get it out before, September or February, maybe. It will be the next opportunity you have to playing Forza Horizon 6. But I do think, to speak to your point about these games that are of such a high quality bar, that you understand what you're getting right away. Like, and I think it's a testament to the developers that are working on these games that are just like so consistent at what they're doing that you as an audience member, you look at it and be like, oh, I understand the package, of what's happening.
Mhm.
And similar thing can go for not even between Marvel Spider-Man 1 to Marvel Spider-Man 2, even to Wolverine. Like a similar kind of formula applies of like, what Insomniac is capable of and what the output will be like. Um, but I do think that there is a certain part of it that is the player agency, I suppose, comes into it because I find that like most of the times when I'm playing or revisiting a franchise or playing a sequel, I don't necessarily. It's not the excitement about the sequel until I start the game. Like rarely is it that for me, I'm not jumping into a sequel. Like this is a terrible example, but it's one that is top of mind because of I just turned on my PlayStation 3. But when I played Black Ops 2, it wasn't like, man, I want to see what next Black Ops story's got to be.
Sure.
But I played it for the, let me just play that gameplay. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, I forgot how the rest of this tastes so good. And I think Forza is a similar thing because that was literally, I think, why I started Forza Horizon 6 and I was like, okay, cool. I'm not like super hooked on it. And then slowly I'm like, but fuck this story or whatever. Like this is just fun to drive around in. And
Mhm.
I think you'll notice that when like in a Spider-Man, you'll just start swinging for no like. I haven't played Spider-Man 2, but I did play Miles Morales, and like Miles Morales did the same thing where I was like, oh, I wasn't really looking forward to the story, but man, it's just fun to swing around, and then all of a sudden you're getting invested, and I
Well,
think
sure, I'll
maybe
go do
that's
this crime. Sure,
how
I'll go do this billboard in
yeah,
Forza. Like, yeah.
and I think it can definitely bite you in the ass as well because similar to what all three of us sort of said about Arkham Origins, I think it's easy in that game to overstay your welcome, or or vice versa, like over the game to overstay its welcome because you're engaging with all these gameplay mechanics that don't add to the story, and so you're just engaging with the gameplay at a face value, which
Mhm.
can get tiring if you're not haven't already beaten the game because you're like, fuck, I have another 3 hours of this.
Right.
I've exhausted my fun levels. Um, but yeah, I recommend Forza Horizon 6. Again, before GTA 6, if you want to avoid the fatigue of driving around a beautiful looking open world map. But look, if you got some audiobooks to plow through, good podcasts, it's a perfect game for it. I don't know if I'll necessarily have a review for this thing. Maybe I'll just like copy and paste Nick's review and just like swap out 5 for 6.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I'll do. But for now, like that's my thoughts, and I'm sure you'll hear a little bit more about maybe what I think about Forza Horizon 6 if it changes drastically at any point in the later episodes of Save Slot. But as we come to the end, that's all you had, right, Nick? Is there anything else that you've been hiding up your sleeves?
Nope.
Okay.
That's all I've been playing outside of items for retrograde. So,
Yes. So before I throw it to Nick for the outro. Which, by the way, this felt like a very breezy episode, which is interesting because we've been going for a good little bit here.
yeah.
But that being said, next up, it's going to be a little bit weird to the what's on the docket because Nick and I are both going to be playing, along with Austin, God of War Ascension. I just installed the game like an hour before we started recording, so I have not yet played the game, but I'm looking forward to it. I got my old PlayStation 3 from when I was, in middle school and high school. Which is fun to rediscover, and it still works like a fucking charm. Like no hesitation, and it loaded in, and I felt like the goosebumps of like, oh my god, this is the startup of the PlayStation 3. But obviously, we're not going to talk about any of our thoughts on God of War Ascension, even if we're halfway through it by the time we're next, on this podcast, because that's exclusively for retrograde. So you have to tune into that. Which I imagine that episode will be delayed because only one of us has started the game and it's almost in the last third of the month. But luckily, it's not a long game. It's one of the shorter games we have, so it shouldn't be
Hmm.
too bad. And then for me, I'm about to do something that I have not done yet, and I'm very excited to do. But I think that depending on how timing works out, it'll be what I talk about next episode and probably the episode after that, and maybe even that episode after that. But that is because I ran a poll over on my YouTube channel and I asked people, Nick, perhaps the most niche upside to having a YouTube community for gaming videos is that when you have a backlog where you can't decide what open world RPG you want to play, you can just throw it to the community and you'll be surprised. So I threw it out. The poll was between Fallout 4, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Oblivion Remastered, and The Witcher 3. And The Witcher 3 ran with it for the first 24 hours. And I was like, okay, I even installed the game. I was like, oh, this is it. Surefire lock. But no, Fallout 4 has well taken the lead. It is now, it's 57%. So I don't foresee by in the next 24 hours, which is when the poll ends, that it will be usurped. So I am going to be playing Fallout 4. That is my next big open world RPG to take on, and I'm very excited about it. I was so the I got this list because I got a bunch of people recommending me open world RPGs over the years, and I picked the ones that I most wanted to play on my list. And there were two Fallout games, and I asked Nick which one I should play between New Vegas and 4, and he said New Vegas sucks, only play 4. So by his words, not mine. But
my
but
cred will be assassinated if that's all that we get. I said New Vegas was the better RPG. 4 would be better for streaming if that was the route that he went. Yes. So
yeah. And so 4 will be what I'm playing. Now simultaneously, we'll be doing I will be doing what I've been wanting to do for a bit, which is I have this handy little notebook which has this sticker from Gamescom, by the way, a game that I have not played. We stood in line, and then it was too long of a line, so they gave us some free stuff, and we're like, okay, cool, and we walked out. But anyway, in that notebook, I will be taking my notes of my experience in Fallout as if I was my character. It's the first full kind of game diary that I will be attempting to do with an open world RPG like this, which I've been very interested to see how that would play out. And then we'll have a conversation about it on the Respawn Station podcast once ever I cross the finish line there. But very intrigued. A lot of exciting things about Fallout 4, and I'm glad that it's finally time. I honestly thought it wouldn't win. I thought Oblivion or Witcher or even Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, based on recency, would win.
Yeah, kind of surprised to be honest, but
yeah, currently there's Oblivion and KCD2 only have one vote each. So very, very surprising. But anyway, that's enough about that. Nick, do you have what's next for you? I mean, obviously you're a third of the way into Doom: The Dark Ages. So is the finishing that? Do you have another thing lined up just to tease the people about what to expect next?
Oh, I always got things lined up. But yeah, Doom and God of War is what I'm going to be focusing on for the time being.
Okay.
If only to just get Doom off of my hard drive so we don't have weird hard drive issues like last week while recording this.
Sure.
But as far as Game Pass stuff goes, I have the Outer Worlds 2 installed, so I'm kind of between that or, again, Resident Evil Requiem.
The first game was also recommended. Mm-hmm. Oh, Requiem, okay.
Probably leaning more towards Requiem just because I know it's shorter than Outer Worlds. Outer Worlds is going to be a bit of a commitment whenever I'm ready to start playing that, so.
Yeah. But, interesting. We're going to have potentially a very open world RPG heavy episodes coming up, or it'll be a little bit of horror and open world RPG. We'll see. But of course, best way to stay on top of episodes is by hitting the subscribe button if you're new. Nick, what's the rest of the rigmarole?
Leave a like, comment on whatever service that you're watching on, and also, you know what? Throw down in the comments if you've played any of the games that we talked about today. What's your favorite part? Because I think we need a bit of positivity in the online discourse of gaming.
Yes.
It's fun to talk about cool games doing cool stuff. So add to the conversation in that way. And With all that said, have a good night, good morning, and a damn good time.
Dang, Nick, you nailed it.